Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Impactful Coaching Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about something that most entrepreneurs need, but they miss dearly. It's personal power. We're going to talk about personal power for entrepreneurs and how entrepreneurs can step into their personal power and use it to overcome their business challenges. Now, what do I mean by personal power? Personal power is your ability to act and to bring about an outcome that you want to achieve. Now, if you look at someone like Elon Musk, you probably say he is someone with immense personal power because he is able to bring about outcomes that people think are impossible. So at one point of time, if someone told you that you would be able to run electric autonomous cars that basically run by themselves, people would have laughed at you, but Elon Musk made the impossible happen. And similarly, when he went to NASA and then he said, why don't we just reuse the rockets? Everybody thought it was impossible, but Elon made it happen. He's shown personal power in each one of these cases. And as entrepreneurs, it's very important to exercise your personal power because that's what determines whether you'll be successful or just an average entrepreneur. Now, in every industry, there are two types of entrepreneurs. One type of entrepreneur knows everything, but even though he knows everything, he's not really acting. He's not really exercising himself. He's not really going out there, taking advantage of his network, taking advantage of his connections, and exposing himself. But then there's this other entrepreneur who may not have the best knowledge, but he utilizes every single opportunity he gets. He knocks on every single door, and then he waits for it to open. And then he keeps pushing. And you know what's the result? The first entrepreneur is actually going around with a begging bowl, hoping for customers. The second entrepreneur, on the other hand, is known as the face of his industry. He's able to get clients on demand, and he is literally the best known person within that industry. So that's the impact of having personal power. Now, personal power actually comes from concentrated focus. Concentrated focus on your goals, on the outcomes that you're working towards. You can improve the quality of your business and your life by just making small incremental changes daily. As an entrepreneur, there are several areas that require your focus and attention. Now, if you are able to apply your focus effectively in each of these areas on a regular basis, you will be able to grow the business to the levels that you want. The first thing that you need to master as an entrepreneur is your mental focus. Now, here's what happens to most entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs, have their mental focus completely distracted. They are worried about the economy. They are worried about what's happening with AI. They are worried about future technology. They are worried about competition. And they spend their entire lifetime in anxiousness, wondering what will happen next. Or they are chasing after shiny objects. This one, someone told them that Facebook ads are working, so let's try Facebook ads. Someone else told them that LinkedIn is working, let's do LinkedIn. Or someone else told them that they should be doing networking, and let's start doing networking. So they're chasing either shiny objects, or they're really worried and they're just in touch with their emotions, and they're not really focusing on what really matters. Now, entrepreneurs with personal power, they control their mental focus. They understand the market that they are dealing with, the demand customers have for their product or service. They work like a madman on fulfilling that demand. They build teams, systems, and structures to support that, and then they keep growing one step after another. Now, this may seem simple, but as an entrepreneur, it's very important to get your mental focus right. You can't afford to be reading what's in the media, and this also includes your Instagram feed and your social media feeds that keep saying, hey, this technology is about to destroy so-and-so industry, this technology is about to destroy so-and-so industry. Yes, there are things that are happening, but that does not mean you let your emotions take over, when you hear this news. What you really need to do is control your mental focus. The main reason why many entrepreneurs are not able to control their mental focus is because they don't have an understanding of the vision they want for themselves. Now, it happens, people start a business, they set a goal, they try to achieve it. Sometimes they achieve it. But when they do achieve it, they realize that there's still a long way to go for them to actually truly achieve what they originally meant to achieve. That's when they get sidetracked, they get distracted. Sometimes they get disengaged. When these things happen, they miss the vision they have for their business. Now, because they miss the vision they have for their business, they let their emotions get in the way. You know what? Champions always practice in private before they perform in public. Now, as an entrepreneur, it's very important that you learn to practice in private. you practice your vision, you understand your vision, you visualize what you want to achieve, and then you become absolutely clear about what you want to create in your business. And then you map out all the steps that you need to take to make that outcome a reality. And you don't stop there. After mapping that out, you're also going to have to map out all the obstacles that may come in the way that may prevent you from achieving that goal. Because you know what? Life and business has speed bumps. It's the speed bumps and barriers that make entrepreneurship worth it, that make life also worth it. It's about identifying those speed bumps, and in spite of those speed bumps, it's about working to basically make your vision come true. Now, this is where most people self-sabotage. They start working on a goal, they map out a bunch of steps to take, and then they realize a bunch of obstacles are there, and then they experience difficulty, they experience failure, and when they experience difficulty or failure, they take it personal. They take that as a setback, and sometimes they stop trying. Now, there are others that may try a few times, but with every rejection, they get dejected. But you know what? In business, rejection happens a lot more than you possibly can imagine. But they take this rejection personally. They eventually stop trying or stop trying at the level that they should be in order to make their business work. Before SpaceX could manufacture reusable rockets, they had to go through countless failures. Obviously, these failures also costed Elon Musk a lot of money, but he persisted regardless instead of giving up. And now it's a reality. Similarly, in your business, you may experience countless failures, countless rejections, but you don't stop. You have to keep trying. You have to understand your compelling vision, and then you have to work towards it. The problem is, as people experience failure, they tone down the vision because they don't want to fail. They're tired of failing. This is again a perfectionist syndrome. So to handle this effectively, what you need to do is you need to also master your emotional focus or your emotional state. So remember, first thing that I mentioned is your mental focus. The second thing is your emotional state. As an entrepreneur, as you go through different situations, that may be interacting with vendors, that may be interacting with clients, that may be interacting with employees, that may involve interacting with different kinds of things, and also your own family situation. As you experience life, there are many things that will affect your emotional state. But as an entrepreneur, it's important for you to be in a state of resourcefulness. Remember, it's not about resources, it's about resourcefulness that matters. Now, if you have resourcefulness and if you have the enthusiasm to make your vision come true, you will find a way. But what happens is most people aren't able to manage their emotional state. Now, the difference between a champion entrepreneur and an average entrepreneur is that the champion entrepreneur learns how to handle his emotional state. In spite of one or two rejections, he's trying to go after the next client, next clients, next client, next client. He keeps going after these clients, But whereas the person who gets rejected, they let it affect their emotional state and then they stop trying. Now, to master your emotional state as an entrepreneur, there are a couple of things that you can do. First thing is your posture. When you adopt the right power posture, you can have a lot more confidence, So whenever you make a sales call, whenever you have a rejection, whenever you go through a difficult experience, try to adopt a power pose. Now that could mean standing like a Superman for 2 minutes, It'll change the neurons in your brain, and then it'll increase the amount of dopamine that's secreted in your brain, and you will be able to handle your situations more confidently. That's one way. Now, the other way to manage your emotional state consistently is to create a routine that builds vitality in your life. Now, that could be in the form of an exercise program that you follow. It could be in the form of a jog that you go to every single morning, or it could be some kind of yoga that you practice, whatever that is. You want to create a healthy regimen for yourself at the start of your entrepreneurial career, so it creates vitality for you. When your body feels good on the inside, you're going to feel good mentally and emotionally, and that will affect how you show up in work and how you perform, how you take these rejections, how you take these setbacks, how you beat through the obstacles. The third secret to mastering your personal power as an entrepreneur is now having a sense of action orientation and a sense of urgency is very important as an entrepreneur. You want to act fast and act consistently. As an entrepreneur, when you have an idea, it's very easy to think about the idea, to reason on the idea, to procrastinate on it, and then never act. But this is where it's very important to think fast and act effectively. As an entrepreneur, you can't really act on every single idea that you have. But as soon as you have an idea, what I want you to do is write that idea down on a piece of paper and then map out all the pros and cons of implementing that idea. Once you map out all those pros and cons, you'll be able to analyze whether that idea is worth it or whether that idea is not worth it. And then you want to make a decision and then start acting on that idea. It's when you do that, you start stepping into your personal power. Because confidence does not come before you implement an idea. It's on the other side. It's when you implement the idea, you get confidence. Now, as you're thinking about taking action, the first thing that's going to come up is, what if I try and what if I fail? Guess what? You're going to fail regardless. As soon as you try an idea, it's never going to work right away. Regardless of the situation, you have to try again. Now, as you start working on your goal, it's very important to determine whether or not you're going in the right direction. It's not about whether you're getting the perfect result, because the perfect result is nearly impossible as soon as you begin. To give you an example, when an aeroplane starts off to fly from New York to Chicago, it's rarely going on the perfect direction. It's going in the general direction towards Chicago. But the captain gets feedback, as they are flying the plane, they try to understand where the flight is heading, and then they course correct on a consistent basis. Similarly, when you start working on your idea, you want to check whether or not you are going in the right direction. You will not get the results perfectly, but it's important about making sure that you're in the right direction, and you want to keep persisting at that. Now, the fourth secret to mastering your personal power as an entrepreneur is to have powerful role models. Now, you don't have to take a role model and follow that person both in their personal life and private life. Now, there are great role models in business life, but they don't have the most perfect personal lives. Now, that does not mean that you stop having role models. It's very useful to always have a couple of role models that you aspire to be like. If you have them, you can ask yourself, now, what would my ideal role model do in this type of situation? How would he or she approach this situation? Now, these role models can also be fictional, but whatever it is, it's important to have a role model. When you do these things and then start taking action, you will slowly tap into your personal power as an entrepreneur. And as you keep working this, you will expand your personal power. Now, when you expand this personal power is when you'll be able to bring about magical transformation in your business. So remember the 4 keys. First, conquer your mental focus, establish your vision, have absolute clarity on what you want to achieve, map out all the steps that you need to take and identify the obstacles, and then move past the obstacles. The second most important thing to master your personal power is learning to manage your emotional state. So set up a routine to manage your emotional state on a regular basis, because as an entrepreneur, you're going to have an oscillation of emotional states as you deal with different types of people. So that's the most important thing. The third one is action orientation and a sense of urgency. You want to take action on your ideas immediately. Map out all the possible pros and cons of each idea and then start taking massive action towards your goal. The fourth thing is to have healthy, successful role models that you can mirror to grow your business. Apply these things in your business life and tap into your personal power as an entrepreneur and expand it and bring about the massive transformation in your business that you want. This is Harry Ramsay signing off from the Impactful Coaching Podcast.